Winnipeg South Centre is a large urban riding, and it's one of extremes. It includes Winnipeg's most affluent areas, grand and venerable Wellington Crescent with its multi-million-dollar mansions, and Tuxedo with street after street of elegant homes. But at the same time, it's a riding of modest to lower income housing, and it's home to a diverse mix of people and ethnicities. It also has an interesting political history.
For more than 2 decades, Winnipeg South Centre was a Liberal stronghold. That changed in the last election when the riding suddenly went Conservative. Joyce Bateman won the riding by 722 votes. It was largely seen as an anomaly, and now Bateman is in a serious fight to hold on to her seat.
When I read the newspaper, sometimes it looks like it's a really, really close race. So I will just never leave anything to chance. With any of my opponents, we're just reaching the people. Well, it's the best riding in Canada. It's absolutely fantastic. It's got amazing diversity. It's got amazing people, and it's truly an honor to serve this riding.
Bateman is up against Liberal Jim Carr, the NDP's Matt Henderson, and the Green Party's Andrew Park. But Carr is the one many believe may win this riding.
I'm motivated by the idea of service to Canada, and I'm motivated by trying to give Canada a government that has more respect for democracy and democratic institutions, can tolerate dissent, and reflects in the candidates that we've put together from coast to coast the width, the breadth, the depth, and the very diversity of Canada itself. I'm excited to be a part of Justin Trudeau's team, and I'm absolutely committed to winning the riding of Winnipeg South Centre as my small contribution to the national effort to replace the Harper government.
Jim Carr is a prominent Winnipeg community leader. He's been an MLA, he was the founding CEO of the Business Council of Manitoba, and is a recipient of the Order of Manitoba.
How formidable is he?
Well, he's a strong candidate. He'll have strong name recognition. He has been an elected official in Winnipeg in the past, and he's kept a public profile as what many people see as a business leader in Winnipeg. So this is someone that has name recognition. He has a public profile, just as Ms. Bateman did in the last election. So I think he's a strong local candidate. I also know that he's been organizing in this seat for quite a while.
Conventional wisdom says the riding could switch back to Liberal territory.
Winnipeg South Centre it kind of falls into a small category of urbane, sophisticated, highly educated, generally high income constituencies in Canada. I kind of count it along with ridings like Vancouver Quadra. And these ridings tend to be naturally Liberal ridings. In the last few decades, they've tended to be Liberal ridings, but in some cases, the Conservatives have broken through, and this is the case in this constituency in the last election.
But why did it go Conservative when it had been Liberal since 1988?
Mr. Harper was popular, and so was Jack Layton. And the orange wave lapped a little bit ashore in Winnipeg South Centre, and there were more NDP votes than there had been in other elections. And the Liberals were, let's be honest, we were in the doghouse. We were taken to the woodshed by the people of Canada.
Well, I think the Liberal Party has changed since 1968. I think it's changed enormously, and I think people actually care about the economy, they care about job creation, they care about prudent fiscal investments.
Bateman herself was a Liberal who switched sides.
You were a longtime Liberal before you became a Conservative. What made you switch?
The Liberal, well, I was joined by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of Canadians in the 2011 election, switching from the Liberals. The Liberals have left a lot of people in this country without a home, and I have a wonderful home in the Conservative Party. Mr. Speaker, Prime Minister is not an entry-level job, and time again, the leader of the Liberal Party has proven that he just isn't up to the task.
Bateman is a chartered accountant who was also a school board trustee prior to becoming an MP.
What do you think is your biggest accomplishment as an MP?
Well, that's there are a few. I think matrimonial property rights for Aboriginal women is one of them, and I was so privileged to be a part of that committee that made that happen on status of women. Locally, I think one of my biggest accomplishments is getting Waverley Underpass done. And for about 35 years, we've needed that very badly as the development has grown out south. We have truly needed that. And it's done because I realized that that was an important issue. I talked to all the other levels of government.
For people in the riding, it's an all too familiar sight. Trains cross this busy artery more than 40 times a day, holding up traffic often for 20 minutes at a time. Building an underpass here has been talked about for years. Nearly $46 million of federal funding for the project was announced just days before the writ was dropped. In a riding as hotly contested as this one, for Bateman, the announcement couldn't have come at a more opportune time.
This had to happen. We need an underpass at this crossing because there is so much disruption to families always. So I'm thrilled that we got it done. I'm thrilled that we got all the funding put in place, and it's going to happen because you can see the cars starting to pile up, and it happens all the time.
What do you say to critics who would say that the money came in just in time for the election and that it took too long to come in?
I would say those same critics were probably the people who held office for the previous 35 years and did nothing about this safety issue and this time-wasting issue. As soon as I came into office, I saw very clearly that this was an issue that mattered to my constituency, and I started acting on it. And these things don't happen overnight. It takes many, many, many meetings to make this happen. There are 3 levels of government. You've got to get your own team on side. You've got to get others on side. They don't happen, and that's why, we needed this 35 years ago. It didn't happen. I got the job done.
Making this even more interesting is the subdivision located just down the road, Lindenwoods. This area was formerly part of another riding, but for 2015, the boundaries of Winnipeg South Centre changed to include Lindenwoods, an area typically seen as conservative. In a tight race, that could work in Bateman's favor, but Lindenwoods is actually proving hard to peg.
Well, you know what? It may be touted as a conservative area, but there's a lot of red signs there. So what it means for me is that I have had the privilege and the responsibility of knocking on all of those doors and introducing myself. And we started that last year.
I love canvassing in Lindenwoods. I love it because we went in thinking that, oh my goodness, there's going to be this wall of blue. There is no wall of blue. And it's now dotted with tons of red. And I really enjoy the challenge of welcoming the voters of Lindenwoods into the riding of Winnipeg South Centre, and I think we're doing very well.
Can I interest you in a button?
Over at Jim Carr's headquarters, his supporters are definitely in a party mood.
And I've been around a long time.
Okay.
I've lived in this community all my life. I've experienced in the legislature, in culture, in business, in journalism. So I hope that you agree that I've got the qualifications to be a strong voice for us in Ottawa.
Well, I hope so.
The Conservatives in Parliament do not like Justin T. They do not like his politics and nor his pedigree. But I feel when I see Justin that love is in the air. It's the opposite of what I get from Harper or Mulcair.
We feel terrific. We had a canvass last night that we didn't really quite believe. We went to an apartment block on Corden Avenue and spent an hour in there, knocked on every door, even though they wanted us to knock on every 4th door. And everybody was a Liberal. Now, I know that maybe 2 or 3 of them were just trying to flatter us, but it was really a remarkable canvass. And as we get closer to election day, we're finding that it really is moving wonderfully in our direction from all sides.
For Carr, change can't come fast enough.
How has the riding been with a Conservative MP?
If I'm elected, I can assure the voters of Winnipeg South Centre that a very important part of my job is to make sure that their message gets through. And I think that there are many people in the riding who don't feel that's been the case for the last 4 years, and that the Member of Parliament ought to be accessible, ought to have town hall meetings. I don't think there have been very many town hall meetings. We're promising 4 a year at least. So I think it's the difference in how you see your role, and I'm very clear about what my role is and what my role should be, as it should be for every member of Parliament.
What are the issues that you're hearing at the door?
I say the number one issue is people want change. They want change because they don't like the way in which the Harper government has managed its affairs, too tightly controlled at the centre, not enough tolerance for dissent, not enough freedom for local members of Parliament to speak their mind. And cumulatively, I don't think they like the government's attitude towards the Supreme Court of Canada, to the Parliamentary Budget Officer, to the Chief Electoral Officer. They don't like omnibus bills that are 600 pages long. They don't particularly like the government's attitude towards veterans and the respect that we think veterans deserve. So there's that whole cluster of issues about the way in which the government governs. I think they care about Canada's role in the world. One of the most moving moments of the campaign for me was knocking on the door of a mother who has 4 children, one of whom is in a wheelchair. And when I asked what's the most important issue for you and your family, she said, there's no accessibility in the local library. So her daughter could not make her way down the stairs to look at kids' books in the local library. Well, I care about that because it's important to her in her life. And I would advocate on her behalf, even though it's not in the federal jurisdiction. So in every conversation I've had with the voters of Winnipeg South Centre, I've learned something important about what matters to them.
At the door, people care about having a job. They really care about the economy. And there is nothing, whether it's a single mom or a big family, there is nothing more important for any of us than to have a job so that we can contribute to our families and also contribute to our community. So that really is a clear, it resonates with everyone.
Appealing to specific parts of the electorate is especially important in Winnipeg South Centre. There is a large Jewish community in the riding that can't be disregarded.
How important is the Jewish vote in this riding?
It's very important. The Jewish community is about 8% of the riding, and the Jewish community tends to vote, probably 80%. So it's an important part of the riding, and the Ukrainian vote is an important part of the riding. Actually represents more people than the Jewish community does. And I'm interested in all of the communities and the interests of the people who make up those communities. And I know that regardless of your ethnicity or your religious background, you also care about those issues that I was talking about a few minutes ago. So I am of the Jewish community myself. I was born and raised here. I've been active in the Jewish community all my life, family and friends. But I don't want people to vote for me because I'm a part of one ethnic community or another. I want them to vote for me because they think I'm the best candidate available on the ballot.
Now, I understand that you were at a All Candidates Forum at the Asper Centre just recently.
Absolutely.
How important is the Jewish vote in this riding?
Well, every vote is important in this riding. Every vote is important. I believe somebody in the newspaper said, and I haven't checked it recently, it's about 7% of the vote, but there are many other segments of the population that are, every vote is important.
But Bateman may have put some of those votes in jeopardy. At that forum, Bateman was booed for naming Liberals she labeled as unsupportive of Israel.
So 708, I will do. If nobody else is rocking it.
The NDP's Matt Henderson is a high school teacher at a private school in Winnipeg. This is his second run for office. In 2011, he ran as an independent, garnering just 218 votes. It wasn't a serious run.
Well, I mean, the last time I ran in 2011, it was a class project. It was a pedagogical experience. It was an educative experience for my students. But I mean, this one, is the stakes are so much greater, and I chose the NDP because of a couple reasons. One, the NDP has always taken principled stances. It's always, whether it's on the War Measures Act, whether it's on C-51, whether it's on the position in Syria and northern Iraq, it's principled. People may not agree with it, but it's principled, and we don't budge. And the other thing that I really, really respect is that it's the party, you know, that wants to eliminate poverty. It's the party that has traditionally fought since the CCF all the way into the NDP. It's fought for those people who have been marginalized, right, in our society, and its fundamental goal is to make sure that everybody has the basic means for a decent life.
What are your priorities for this riding?
The first one is evidence, right? I think before we start making policy, we have to gain a knowledge of who we are as a country, and so bringing back the long-form census is a big priority of mine. A second one for me is dealing with issues of poverty, right? I mean, social housing has been completely devastated in this country over the last couple decades. People in this riding, and I've been through public housing in the riding and cooperative housing, we need to make a better investment of that so that people have their needs met, needs met so that they can participate fully in the economy. And I think a second or a third one for me would be, I think Winnipeg South Centre has a real opportunity to demonstrate what reconciliation looks like. And one of the priorities for me is to really push for an inquiry, and the NDP have pledged this on missing and murdered Indigenous women. We have to do that right away. We have to get to the bottom of this. And also to deal with how we share time and space with First Nations. This is a letter I've written to constituents. Those are my values. One of the reasons why I ran was because I was disappointed in the Liberals. I was disappointed in the fact that the Liberals voted for C-51. And I was, you know, they voted for 5 consecutive Conservative budgets. They're the party that cut the CBC by a third. And so, you know,
I think Tom's point that you either don't like the Conservatives, you go back to Liberals, and you don't like the Liberals, and you go back to Conservatives. I think his point of, you know, there is another choice is very valid.
There is a choice, and for me, I chose the NDP because it's the party that in its constitution says its goal is to eliminate poverty.
Yeah, I think we have a long way to go now to get back to, I don't know if it's the Canada that everyone thinks they knew, or
right.
It's a nostalgic viewpoint.
Or if it's in our, but a Canada that's progressive, right?
Henderson says this is the most important election in his lifetime.
And there have been other important elections, but this election seems to be drawing a line in the sand to sort of say, are we the country that meets the needs of the most vulnerable? Are we the country that protects rights and freedoms? Are we the country that wants to do good?
Andrew Park is an associate professor of ecology who's running an energetic campaign for the Green Party.
My motivations for running for office, okay, many. To start with, about halfway through Mr. Harper's majority mandate, I began to realize that I was either going to have to stop reading the newspapers and stop listening to the radio, or I was going to have to step forward and try and actually do something to make a difference, because on a daily basis, there were things that just left me really annoyed or very disturbed, right? Whether it was the muzzling of scientists, the virtual deletion of a lot of our environmental legislation, but more than any of that, the daily abuses of democratic procedure in Parliament.
How amenable are people to your cause?
There's a huge amount of latent Green support in this riding, okay? People, first and foremost, when Elizabeth May was in that first debate, it gave a huge boost to my credibility at the door.
So I'm Andrew Park. I'm your Green Party candidate in the coming election. Can I leave some literature with you?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, so have you ever thought about voting Green?
What are the issues that you're hearing at the door?
It often has to do with the things that impact their daily lives. So we're talking about health care. Inevitably, if I knock on a door and it's a mother, she's inevitably talking about either education or childcare. A lot of people talk about city infrastructure, transit, potholes, things like that. And a significant minority are talking to me about environmental issues in general.
Park is also hearing that people are feeling very uneasy.
People are afraid, right? This is an election that's being driven largely by fear because of what Mr. Harper has done with this country, right? Because what he has done flies against the wishes and the principles of most Canadians. And for that reason, it's a tough battle. I'm always running into the strategic voting argument.
What is that argument that you're hearing?
Well, it's a very simple argument. It's like, well, you know, we love green values, but I'm thinking about voting anything but Harper, right, or ABC, right, anything but Conservative. And once you run into, I mean, not everybody talks like that, maybe 3 out of 10, right? But when you run into that, it's hard to start talking about issues.
There was plenty of time to talk about issues at this all-candidates forum. It brought together all those running in Winnipeg South Centre, all except for Joyce Bateman. It wasn't the first all-candidates forum she's missed, a point not lost on anyone present.
Before we start, I think we have to acknowledge the absence of the Conservative candidate in a slightly more formal way. Say a few words to the viewers. So, the rubber chicken of shame is going to appear wherever a Conservative candidate fails to show up, ladies and gentlemen, because
she hasn't shown up, and I think it's disrespectful. It's disrespectful to democracy, but it's disrespectful to the people in the riding. And especially if you're the member of Parliament, you need to come out to these things to be held to account. And maybe you've done great things, and you can talk about those, but people should have the right to be able to say, you know, where do you stand on your decisions made in the House of Commons? You know, and I think we're missing that opportunity, and it's disgraceful.
Unfortunately, there were only 3 of the 4 candidates here, so they didn't have the broadest range of perspective that they would otherwise have had. But I'm always happy to be able to be positive, to present our ideas and my candidacy and try to persuade them that it's the best platform and the best vote.
What's your strategy for going to all candidates forums?
Well, I'm just very respectful. I listen to everything that's said, and I say what I want to say. And that's the strategy.
There have been some forums that you haven't gone to, and some critics would say that, or Conservatives in other jurisdictions as well, have not been going to all candidates forums, and some critics would say that they're not showing up enough. How would you respond to that?
Well, I can't speak for any other jurisdiction, but I can speak for Winnipeg South Centre, and we've participated in 2 very important forums that were for the bulk of the people. You know, if every high school has a forum, it's not really realistic to go to each and every one. So to go to the Chamber of Commerce one, to go to the big organization ones, that's what we've done.
The forum covered a variety of issues.
This is a very important election in Canada because we have had 10 years of a government that isn't interested in science or scientific method. We want to take the tape off the mouths of scientists. We want to bring back the long-form census. We want to say no to omnibus bills presented to Parliament with 600 pages, where it's impossible to determine what's really important from what isn't. We want to give members of Parliament more freedom and more power to represent the representative, to be a representative from the people, in my case, in Winnipeg South Centre. We want to restore Canada's place in the world. I look forward to a very robust debate, which I'm sure we'll have, to talk about the issues that are important to you.
But one issue stood out: strategic voting.
When you wonderful gentlemen and your parties duke it out, and I might assume that a number of us agree with a number of things you're saying, it ends up splitting the vote on the left, and our esteemed member of Parliament who couldn't be here ends up winning. I'm terrifically concerned about that. I'm concerned about it in this constituency. I'm concerned about it across the country. And I'm terribly concerned that your wonderful speaking and positions that you're putting forth are going to end up splitting our left vote, and we're going to end up in the situation we were in before. So you know, one of the alternatives that has been presented is to vote strategically, with all due respect to the carefully crafted positions of the various people here. But I mean, I have to say, the House is burning down. I don't really care what color the paint on the walls is right now. I want the House to be fixed, and I then want to see us build Canada back to what it was before.
The first thing that I say to folks when they start talking about strategic voting is that this is a democracy,
and that we should be able to vote with conviction. We should be able to vote with our hearts and our minds. Absolutely. I think that if we are progressive, leftist people in this riding, we can't be feared into voting into second best. We have to stand up, get on our roofs and say, I'm voting NDP right now. I'm putting a sign on my lawn. I'm bullying my neighbors. I'm going to work, because it can't just be me, right? It can't just be me, but it's a team effort.
And it's very distracting, frankly, because this is an election that's being fueled by fear, right? And that fear is distracting people from thinking about the sort of policies they actually want to see represented in Ottawa when the dust settles, right? I've really seen this at the door.
I never make the argument when I am going door to door to people that they should vote strategically. Never. I try to convince them that we can find an alignment between my views and the parties and their own. That is my objective. There are sufficient differences that I can make that argument. And then now, let's see what the people of Winnipeg South Centre and the people of Canada decide. And then we can have a conversation after that.
They weren't the answers the woman wanted to hear.
I leave on that note because we know what's going to happen.
Could I ask everybody, please, when the candidates are speaking, let's not heckle, okay?
Are there currently conversations happening between the parties about supporting the strategic vote movement, you know, with putting the Liberal candidate forward in this riding and the NDP candidate forward in the Emerald Transcona riding? That is the first part. Are there currently conversations happening? My second question is, if there are not, how can we make those conversations happen? Because all of the issues that you're talking about, with all due respect, are issues for tomorrow. The issue for today is making sure, as the gentleman who is here said, is that we have a government we can have a conversation with.
Participants in the audience were feisty, outspoken, and angry. And with just days to go before the election, voters have only so much time to differentiate between the candidates.
I mean, I differ, I guess, in the sense that that I'm younger, that I have a tremendous amount of energy, and that I'm not a career politician. You know, it hasn't been my lifelong ambition to be a career politician. I'm just a regular person, a teacher, who has been fundamentally disappointed and outraged by the last 10 years of governance.
I was in the legislature from 1988 to 1992. I've been very much involved in public policy and public policy advocacy for 20 years or more. And also, I think I bring a real commitment to becoming a strong voice for us in Ottawa. And that's something that the neighborhood hasn't had. It's something the neighborhood wants, and it's something that I'm well positioned to give them.
One of the big ways I differ from the other candidates is in that I am an independent candidate. I work with Elizabeth May, I don't work for her. As you well know, all other candidates for all other parties have to follow strict party discipline.
Well, I'm the only woman on the slate. That's a difference, and I think you know, I probably listen more, and I'm spending a lot of time at the doors. I'm spending a lot of time, but I truly am the only woman candidate. So,
for CPAC, I'm Kenneth Bell in Winnipeg South Centre.